I like when we bring up something and then we check it and go, oh, whoops, nothing at all. It's not like we're trying to be like historians here,
Right.
A little bit of that, but not like, you're not coming to us for the facts.
You're coming for us for the feels.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Pursuing Pixels. My name's Kevin Portelli, and I'm here tonight with Randall Nolery.
Hey, folks.
And John Hines.
Hello there.
And we are back, as always, to talk about some video games. And I think we have a whole bunch of video games to talk about tonight, guys. So I think we can just dig straight into it.
We really like video games.
Yeah, yeah. And following up from last week, we dug into a handful of games from the Ludum Dare 48 Game Jam, and I've still been digging into a bunch of those. Like, it just keeps like popping up in our feed or on Twitter, and I'm like, oh, this looks cool, or this got super high ratings, or somebody recommended this. And this will probably be the last time we mention the Ludum Dare Jam on the podcast, but just I'm going to probably keep making more videos so stay tuned to like the YouTube or Twitch, because we're going to keep featuring a bunch of these and more than we've just mentioned on the podcast. But
heck yeah,
I do want to start with Below the Ocean, which is a really, really awesome little puzzle platformer from Ishmael Rodriguez, which has me extra pumped. He has a game that he's been working on for a while called Ampjet, which is like seems to be this kind of auto runner platformer, but like with a lot of like boost mechanics, and like it just looks really, really cool. I kind of knew of his stuff anyways, so I was like,
nice.
Let me check this out. And now I'm even more excited for Ampjet after playing this, because it's got, again, these games are made in 72 hours, some of them in 48 hours, but this is like, it's a relatively short game, about 15 minutes, and you play as this like diver underwater, but I mean it's a full package. It's even got a little opening cutscene and kind of sets the mood, and then you like plunge underwater, and it's like even the music has this like kind of floaty, just moodiness to it, and then it's just got this great atmosphere, this like white and blue and black color palette. And I know you had a chance to play through this as well, John.
I sure did.
And yeah, I know I've been always like hyping up platformers, but I was like, this one's a little more puzzly, John, and I know you seem to agree.
Oh yeah.
Because it utilizes not only your like the fact that you're underwater and have a little bit of like a floatiness to your jump, but you're also tethered. Every time you hit a checkpoint, it's like a water tank or an air tank actually, and then you're tethered to that, and then you have to eventually use that tether to like wrap it around things so that you can kind of swing yourself up and use it to solve puzzles or connect it to certain things. And I just thought it was so awesome. And what did you think, John?
Yeah,
we can dig more into like some of the mechanics and whatnot.
No, I really liked this one a lot, and I thought the puzzle progression was perfect for this game.
Nice.
Like
the pacing was fantastic.
It adds like just a couple new mechanics each time until like the puzzles get more and more complicated, and like the pacing is just perfect. Like the first time that you actually have to use the tether as a mechanic, like, because all other times I was just like, oh yeah, it's a cute little, like you see it like behind you as it's like going limp around things, but you don't actually think of it as an object because it's not really restricting you until you get to the point where you have to actually use it as a mechanic. And like I also got into it mostly because in the Discord, like you were talking about it, and I think Morcalb in the Discord was posting a GIF of that, and like just seeing the like in action, the color palette, like it really reminded me of Downwell in that sort of 2-bit or however many like because it is just black, white, and blue from like at the beginning stages of it, and then later on, it adds in a yellow when there are like certain you need to like electrify the tether, and then that will unlock the you need to like bring that and like close a circuit or hit a switch with it. It's great. It is such a good like and like perfect bite-sized length. Like I finished it like my first playthrough I think in 14 minutes.
Nice.
And
That was almost exactly the same. Yeah.
And I got I think 5 out of the 8 gems or whatever.
I got 7, and the only reason I missed one is because I like jumped up like through a platform like to the next screen where I couldn't get back down
Oh, no.
where, like and hit a checkpoint, and I was like, oh no. But I will play it again because the game was so cool, and it's again because it's so short and bite sized. It's like, man, I want to play it again.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just go ahead, Randall.
I did watch a little bit of your stream on this, Kevin, and the tether, I had a question. Is that always the same length? Like, can you know, like for puzzle situations, that's going to go to a certain length and then work from there?
I believe it's always the same length. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it's very like physicsy in like the sense that it's kind of floating around in the water.
Yeah.
And it's not frustrating. Like you have to battle against it a little bit, but like in a fun way. It's not like
you're
frustrating or anything.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. But like, you got to like, oh, I'm not quite wrapped around, or like I got to get it from the other side. I got to wrap it around the other side because it's not quite tight enough from that angle.
Right.
But I would say, like, you're not doing too much where you're like, I guess there's only a few spots where there's like a room with like kind of multiple checkpoints that are close enough to one another where it comes into play where like what tank you're spawning from matters, I guess. But it very minimally, but you're definitely, because they're all kind of like single screen-ish levels. There's a little bit of scrolling, but they're pretty small areas that you're exploring.
Right.
So the tether length doesn't come into play other than how you use it to solve like the puzzle. It's kind of not a scripted solution, but it sort of feels that way. Like there's sort of a way to do it.
There's definitely
cases.
multiple solutions for some of them, but most of them are pretty much like, there's a set thing that you need to do and accomplish. But there is one, I think one of the first times that you had to use or maybe the second time that you had to use the tether to get around like an area of like spikes and not die. Like I was right off the bat, I was like, how many loops do I need to do around this tether to tighten it? And I did like 2, and that was like way too much. Or like, I think I started with 3 actually, and then I went down to 2. And then I like once I did 1, I was like, yeah, of course. Why would you automatically assume that you need to do like so many?
But just that you need to do one, like that's so genius. That's what made me think of that and like ask that question, because I saw that part of the clip where you had to loop around one of those kind of like free floating rocks or whatever. I'm like, oh, that is awesome. Like otherwise it's too long. So
it's so good.
And essentially, like John mentioned, like there will be like those free floating blocks that are yellow and electrified, and that's kind of what you have to do is like wrap the tether around those in a way and then touch like a switch or a door to open it. Like it's just it's so cool.
And there were a couple of those that like I managed to not cheese, but like there was one where I definitely electrified and like got a switch to turn on that was not the intended way, and I was like, oh, that would be so cool if I did that on purpose.
Yeah. Oh man, and yeah, just again the whole package. It just blows my mind that this was made by one person in such a short period of time, and you get a little dance at the end when you beat the game, which is really cute and super cool. And then I guess while we're on the topic of platformers here, I did play another game called Fallen Shovel, which I think I saw the developer like retweet a comment that somebody made about their game that was like, this game is so fun that I forgot about the rice that I was cooking and burned it or something in the kitchen and because I couldn't stop playing. And it's basically, at first I thought at a glance, I just assumed that like any arcade game has a procedural generation element to it. But this is actually like scripted levels. It's like you play as this shovel and you're actually named Shovel Lucifer and you're falling from heaven and trying to get down to hell. And by the time you get to the bottom of the depths of hell or whatever, you're not a shovel anymore. You're a pitchfork. But anyways, what's that?
Do you dig to hell with your shovel body?
Well, here's the deal: is like you're this tiny shovel, and it's very like arcade, like I can't think of a good game to describe, like kind of like hack color palette, I guess. Yeah. But you're that's not a great comparison, but whatever. But you're basically bouncing constantly, like up and down at a regular pace, and then you can charge your jump like to where like, so essentially you start out in this like little cage where there's like these key blocks or these blocks with like a little key on them, and those don't break. So you're just bouncing, and then you charge, and you got to charge, launch into the air, which launches you relatively high, and then once you're launched, you can also double jump. Okay. And then once you progress out of that cage, there are regular blocks that when you do the charge and launch off of those, it breaks those blocks. And then so you're launching yourself into the air, and then your only other way to deal with enemies. It's very Downwell-esque as well. Like you're just working your way downwards, and you're trying to land on enemies for like bonus points. But otherwise, you're just trying to get to the bottom, and you're working your way through like either the 7 deadly sins or the layers of hell. I forget what it is, but it's like purgatory and then lust, and just really cool like level designs like that later in the game. Like instead of being like those key-shaped tiles like that you can't jump on, there'll be like hearts that you can't jump on and stuff like that. But it's just like really precise action platforming, like really fun. I've played it through it a few times already. Like again, it probably took 15 minutes or so to play through the first time, maybe 20 minutes, but really good progression on the difficulty challenge, the difficulty curve, and like I don't know, just really satisfying to play. Like as you get further and further, there's like almost like a glitch world where like the tiles that used to be the ones that you could land on are now the ones that are the breakable ones. And like it just like switches things up and throws a few curveballs at you, and like just really, really well done. And again, like I found another game from this developer that's in development currently. I think it's called Zero Lives. I'll have to double check, but I'll put a link in the episode description. But it's really, really cool. It has a very similar aesthetic, and it looks like a precision platformer, which is very much my thing. So yet again, like another game jam situation where I'm like, oh, cool game jam game, and then oh wait, awesome developer that has another game in the works. Or
how cool is that?
It's really awesome, and especially with Ludum Dare and Game Maker's Toolkit game jams, it's like the quality level, especially if you kind of look at like what's getting rated the highest or just see what's getting the most attention or whatever. It's just, man, it's really, really good stuff, or even just what catches your eye. But one more game I wanted to mention really quick as well, and we've mentioned that care package bundle on the podcast before that Just Cam H put together with the guy. I think we talked about Lonely People Potion Shop on the podcast from Cultisti, our favorite, or at least my favorite. But yeah, Just Cam H put out a game called Corla for Ludum Dare 48, and it is so freaking addictive. It is. Other than the fact that there's no real goal in the game, like there's no way to beat it because it's just a roguelike dungeon crawler progression sort of thing. Yeah. But it's basically a roguelike that's all about dodging, and it's like you play on these solitaire, or not solitaire, it's just like one card at a time. You start on like the Joker card, and then you're trying to fall, like there's, I don't know, it's like probably like a 10 by 8 grid or something like that each map. And then you're moving, it's all mouse controlled though. And so you start out by just being able to move like regular dungeon crawler style, like one tile, up, down, left, or right. But then you pick up all sorts of different buffs to where like you're moving like a knight chess piece, or you're able to screen wrap. Like if you get all the way to the border, you can go from one side to the other, or you get like a free fall where like no matter where you are, you can drop as far vertically as it will allow you to go. And like it will highlight, the nice thing is like, because there'd be no way to really keep track of this if it were like an actual board game. Like you pick up so many buffs. Like one of the runs I had when I was streaming the game, like it was like I could almost click anywhere on the map. Like I had so much mobility, but you're not able to attack enemies in any way. Like you're only trying to avoid, and then there'll be one buff or perk on each floor, or money, which you can then buy buffs and stuff at certain floors. Like there's like little shop floors after every, like, I don't know if it's 10 floors, 5 floors, but after a certain amount of time, I think if you collect all the buffs, then it's just money or health on each level. Right. But you're basically there'll be holes on each level as well. And what you're trying to do is avoid the enemies and then fall through the hole down to the next card. So you go from the Joker to the 2 to the 3. But again, it just keeps looping. And the only thing, like, I really just wish it even just had like a leaderboard, or not even an online, but just like it kept track of your all-time high score. Right. Because even just that, like, just money-wise, because again, after you've collected everything, you're just collecting money. But the cool thing is, like, enemies there's a few, like a crab will only be able to walk sideways, or there's like, you can see what the enemies are going to do as well. Like just like you can see the purple tiles, you'll see the red tiles for where the enemies are going to move next. That's cool. So you can, there's just like, it's so cool. And then also, if the enemies move and fall down a hole, you'll have to deal with them on the next floor. So the enemies will start stacking. They'll even sometimes, if they fall through the floor, they'll end up on the shop floor. So like you'll be in the shop and there'll be like 3 enemies, bouncing around. It's got a really cool, like kind of like scribbly, like hand-drawn art style. Like, I don't know, I've just been really impressed. I've played a few of Cam's games now, and I've been really impressed. I haven't had a chance to play the game that he included with the care package bundle yet. but I really have enjoyed some of his other games. Like Varist was really fun. Volcano Snake, I think it's called, or maybe it's just called Snake. I don't know. But a really fun game jam stuff. Been really impressed with what he can do, and this one's no exception.
Nice.
And I guess just real quick to give a shout out, and John, we both checked this game out as well. This is not a Ludum Dare jam entry, but it is a game jam entry from one of our favorite indie developers, Blabberf. I've gushed about Gun Rounds a few times on the podcast. Just really, really love that game, and it's also available on like iOS and I'm pretty sure iOS, but Android for sure. And it was also in the Itch.io bundle for racial justice and equality, which is how I found Blabberf in the first place and Gun Rounds and whatnot. Just like couldn't love their games anymore. And anyways, this game was made for it's called a chain letter jam, and this is so cool. I don't know who started it initially, but like essentially somebody made a game, and the goal is the theme of the jam or whatever is you get 2 weeks to make a 1 minute game, or like, essentially like a really quick playable game. And then you make that game, and then you tag one new developer, and then that developer like iterates on that game and comes up with a new take on it or a new spin on it, or it just takes that in some way. And I think Blabberf's is maybe idea. Like the. It's so cool, yeah, and it's like you get a little more time, like 2 weeks. You can, it's not so high pressure like Ludum Dare. Hey, we got 1 weekend to get this done. So yeah, this one is you can tell that it had a little bit more time. The polish level is just extreme. Like the pixel art is so striking. There's no music, unfortunately, but I wouldn't say that's like a bad thing. I mean, I just wish it had music because I would just play it nonstop. Because I found this to be really, really fun. And it's kind of similar to You Are Now Possessed a little bit, which we've talked about on the podcast before, in the sense that like you have, it's kind of set up like Mega Man Battle Network, as far as like if you're picturing like a battlefield and you got like two, like, what is it? Like a
3x4.
It's like a 6.
I think.
Yeah, 3x4. Yeah. You basically have 2 columns of 3 each. That you like your character can move between 2 columns of 3, and then the goblin or whatever on the right hand side can move between those as well. And you're always able to see
their moveset will be like put at the top of the screen, so you'll see like the demon is going to shoot 3 fireballs and then move left and up and then 2 fireballs. And you have that information at the beginning of the round, and then you have either any of the WASD keys to move, or you can guard, I believe, attack, shoot your own one fireball, and
like
then
a singular
or do
ball.
nothing.
Yeah.
I actually never did the final.
It is just to like skip a turn or skip a move or whatever. Like you start out by you have 3 moves per turn, and then if you get far enough, then there's 4 moves per turn. And I got to the point where then there's 5 moves per turn. I wasn't able to get past that.
So
I only did it one time.
Telegraphed out like into the breach, essentially. Like,
yes. Yeah.
Wow.
And you do have to time out like the block. Like it's not like putting it. You get 2. You can use up to 2 blocks per turn, and that stays that way even when you get up to where you have 5 moves per turn. So you really do have to manage like, and that you'll be able to see the formation of the fireball that the goblin's going to fire. So it might be like when it shoots the 3 fireballs, it's kind of in like a flying V formation or like a triangle formation, where when it shoots the 2, they're like side by side. But it gets like even though it's such a small playing field, it's like it gets hard to keep track of like,
really hard.
What is this goblin going to do? And like, because what I was going to say is like when you put up a shield, it doesn't like stay up. You have to block on the turn that fireball is moving into your tile that you're on. Like it's not let me put up a block for this turn, if that makes sense. So it's just, I don't know. I just found it to be really addictive to be like, I just kept playing. Well, let me do one more. Let me do one more. And it's just one of those games where like, if you added just one more layer to this, like again, added some music and then added like a progression system or buff system, or like just one more layer to this game, or made the battlefield a little bigger, and like you could totally turn this in.
Like,
yeah.
Oh yeah. That's exactly what I was thinking, where I was like, man, this is so close to being just like, I would recommend this as like, oh, you gotta play this, like, and as like something that you're gonna play forever. As like, I do think it's an incredible idea, and like has a lot of really cool mechanics that I think are very well fleshed out. But I was like, man, I just want a little bit more from this. And like, if this does get expanded on, like, oh, it is 100%. I would spend money like to
Oh,
support.
yeah.
Like
Wow.
this would be
Nice.
incredible.
It's like you said, it's just like a couple, and again, because it was on that scope of like 2 weeks and whatever, again, I don't know if there is any plan to expand it beyond that, but the idea is there for sure, and the style is certainly there. Like, again, it's got this great like blue-green, kind of like turquoise-ish, teal, like all John's favorite colors.
Exactly. Like just appealing to me on every level.
Yeah, and just another shout out to Blabberf, because all their games are fantastic. Dueling Dragons, that's probably our most viewed YouTube video, and that game is also fantastic. It's another turn-based, like it's just really cool, very similar to, I don't know, you got to play their games. You just got to play their games. But Randall, why don't we kick the ball over to you, because I know that you checked out a game that John and I talked about a few weeks ago on the podcast.
That's right. So I actually bought this when you guys bought this because it's $1.
Yes.
At full price.
Full price, not even on sale. Toree 3D. So I'm gonna try to, like, I'm not sure if I'm gonna say too much that you guys didn't already cover when you were pretty glowing about it, a few weeks back. But I also really enjoyed it because it was up my alley just as much as it was up your guys. Like, just that kind of straightforward 3D platformer thing they were doing. It's like it looks like if you took N64 platformer, maybe even more simplified than that, but that's kind of like the polygon level we're talking about. But then you made it really high res, like, which I really
smooth, and
yeah, I love that, like the crispness to it. It kind of reminds me of playing Dreamcast and VGA. Like, you just see, like, man, everything is so crisp and bright and just vibrant. I'm such a sucker for that aesthetic. And that's what Toree 3D brings.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like really fast platforming. It's only 2 buttons, your jump button and your like kind of like shuffly fast run that your cute little like baby chick character that's got sunglasses and a backpack on.
Ugh, love it.
I only got a C rank on every level.
Same as us.
Yep. Oh yeah. I don't know how you would do better than that, to be honest.
I did get an A on the first 2 levels going back after the fact, which the stars are not a factor when it comes to the ranking. It's only the speed. So you're able to do it a little quicker if you just ignore some of the stars.
I will say, like, I really wish that there were like separate star rankings, like for each level on like each character as well, because the second character, like, I was trying to like actually break the game, and just like some of the levels I was able to beat in like a few seconds. Because like, especially like there's one that's like on an aircraft carrier that's mostly like a vertical level or like on the ocean, and like the first character has an infinite jump, or the second character has an infinite
basically
jump.
You can fly.
Yeah.
Basically.
So like I was just like, yep, just go straight up, and like I was like, that doesn't overwrite or it doesn't change what the like best time or best like star rating is on this
That's
level.
I was
too
like,
bad. I was like, I wish that there was individual, like, this is how many stars you got on this level versus this is what your best time was on this level.
Right.
Always want, I'm never satisfied. I just want a little bit more.
There's a couple pieces that I wasn't quite satisfied with either. I'll say that the camera's not perfect.
You can't angle it past a certain point, like vertically. I think I'm saying that right. Like you can't. It like stops once you lower it. To like horizontally.
Correct. Which I found myself like. Obviously, I've played plenty of Nintendo 64 era platformers, so and GameCube and all. No problem dealing with camera and manual camera stuff. It's almost second nature to just do that stuff when it didn't do it for me. But still, not quite enough control. But I mean, it's still workable. It wasn't that big of a problem. I still played all 9 levels. I played a couple of them multiple times. But between that and like the camera, like in its default state, even there was a couple places where there was some clipping through the environments where I'm like, and like some areas where I was kind of making blind jumps or kind of blindish jumps too. I'm like,
There's one part in particular where you're like going down a ramp or something where it's just like you're just like I'm just looking through the environment here.
Yep.
But I kind of love it. I love the jank because that's the way things were. That's the way things were.
It really is true. And it was ultimately really fun. Like I just like I do not have a lot of time to play a bunch of games right now, but it was like late at night and I'm like, oh yeah, I have this game, and I'll boot it up and I beat it in, under an hour. And that's amazing. That's perfect. It's exactly what I'm looking for.
Yeah. Under an hour is like under an hour for $1. Like, how can you go wrong with that?
Yeah.
How can you go wrong with that?
Yeah. Give me more straightforward 3D platformers. I want them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, John, I know you've been firing up the Game Boy lately and checking out a Final Fantasy game that you've never gotten your hands on in the past.
This one was actually a Super Nintendo title.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. But like,
because didn't they make a version of this game for the Game Boy?
No.
Am I?
It might just be
Maybe I'm just still thinking about Final Fantasy Adventure.
Yes.
Yes, you are thinking about Final Fantasy Adventure. But there was an article that was published to Paste magazine.com, which was titled Final Fantasy Mystic Quest is the best Final Fantasy you've never played.
Nice.
Which is a bit of a clickbaity title, but I also was going to take that bet because I've played a few Final Fantasy games, and I'm a fan of the series in general, but I'm not like a super fan.
Sure.
And the core of that article was mostly about how, Square released Final Fantasy for the NES and then like took a break on giving JRPGs to American audiences.
Oh yeah.
And their attempt at making a dumbed down version of Final Fantasy was this game, Final Fantasy Mystic Quest.
Yep.
And it is very much a simplified version of even like the original like Final Fantasy, which wasn't that complicated to begin with. It kind of feels like they just took the original Final Fantasy for the NES and then ran it through like a Link to the Past like Instagram filter.
Hey, like, not so bad.
The way the menus work are very simplified and streamlined, and like it'll like the equipment will just have like a slot that like you don't like you just get items and they're automatically equipped to be the most powerful like armor or anything.
Nice.
Like you'll still see like there's a slot but there's only like, I don't know, 12 pieces of armor in the game. Like
wow.
It's really simplified, and it's pretty much just like the hit A and like you choose your attacks are either like your weapon, and like again like there's no real inventory management. You can swap at like weapons like with the L and R button. You'll get upgrades that like are kind of like almost like Legend of Zelda like interactables. Like you'll get a claw arm that you can use to climb up specific tiles on walls to get through dungeons. So it's a very unique Final Fantasy game that like doesn't really feel like any other of the series. Like even there are multiple modes for to show your HP. Like you could either have it like show like the typical like 300 points out of like 500, or you can have what they have, which are or like the default, which is they'll show a large box at the bottom and then tiny boxes above. Like the 100 will be like bigger box beneath it, so it's not even like giving you numbers, it's just showing like a general idea. It's a lot of interesting choices in like I don't know, like again like there's not even random battles. Like all of the enemies are on screen and you have to like it's like stuff that's actually kind of better in a way.
Like definitely more accessible for sure. I mean,
it's an interesting game, and like I'm playing through it and like it's not terribly difficult or challenging. Like even like if you get to if you die in any battle, like it'll just say like retry and it'll start you over from that battle. Like
nice.
You don't and like if it's just an RNG thing, you can just brute force it and keep doing it until you get good rolls. Like
right.
It's a very easy game in that respect, but at the same time it's like there's a lot of good ideas in this, and like the feel that I was getting at like from playing it now, I was like, man, I could see this being a modern like Pico 8 game. Just like something that's like really scaled back in terms of like limitations on like a virtual hardware, or like say a game jam where they're like, all right, I'm going to make an RPG as quickly as possible and like give you just exactly what you need and nothing more. And like, it's kind of refreshing in that respect. Like It's not overloaded with like so many weapons that you need to manage, or like so many like different characters that you need to level up. It's just like, here's the boss of the area, beat them, move on to the next. Like it's very clear on what your objectives are in every single area. And it's honestly kind of nice. I'm enjoying it a lot.
That's awesome.
Yeah. You got me pretty tempted to check this one out, to be honest, especially as soon as you said no random battles. I was like, okay, now we're talking, because especially you don't see a lot of like environmental puzzle solving or whatever. Right? I don't know if it's puzzle solving, but the way you're saying like climbing around to new areas, like getting abilities for the overworld. I mean, I guess I haven't played a lot of the older Super Nintendo Final Fantasies, but I feel like there's not a lot of that.
The dungeons still feel like a standard like JRPG from that area for the Super Nintendo, but like, yeah, like there's no real, I mean, the overworld map is I don't know what you would call that. Like each individual, like it'll be a town, and then you'll hit left, and then you'll move to, and then they'll have random battle encounters where there are 10 of them. And then once you beat 10 of them, then they're cleared off the map. And then you can move, or like, and you don't even need to do them. Like you can just pass over them, but they're there so that you get.
That has me thinking. Have you had to grind at all? Have you felt the urge to grind for levels to level up or anything?
I haven't, because you get enough of like enemies that you can just encounter in dungeons. Yeah. And then if you leave the dungeon and come back, say if you go to an inn, then all the enemies respawn in their areas. So like, I have like grinded a bit, but I've only just because I'm like, I should probably clear out this enemy, or like I'll get more experience, I think, from those than from the dungeon, or like going back to an early area dungeon. Yeah. But I by no means are you required or like under leveled. I don't think is a position you can even be in this game.
And it's just fun to be overpowered. There's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly.
Like, that's awesome. And such an interesting game that like Square developed this for the North American audience to introduce them to JRPGs. Like it came out here first, and then it came out in Japan and Europe. Like that's crazy.
Yeah. Like the story does feel, and like the animations of the characters does feel kind of like the Legend of Zelda animated TV show. Like in the opening cutscene, your character has a canned shrug like animation, and they do that like 3 times, like turn to face the camera and shrug, and I'm like, good Lord.
Yeah. But no, it's nice to be on cruise control in an RPG too, and that sounds kind of nice.
Oh yeah.
Well, before we get into our pinball conversation that I teased a little bit last week, I think, or a couple weeks ago when I was talking about Kururin or whatever. That's my best stab at that again. I wanted to highlight a couple of indie demos, or a few indie demos that, like, I'll just kind of glance over these as well. But just I've been checking out some demos lately. I've always kind of avoided playing demos for the most part, kind of thinking like, oh, I don't want to spoil the experience or whatever. But I keep finding all these games that are like a work in progress, and like they really kind of release these demos almost like as an individual package in a way. Some of them are just like a level, here's a level in and of itself, but or like I played one the other day that was I'm not going to really get into it, but it talked about, or like it was like a mini Metroidvania, but it actually had like walls put up that just said demo wall. It was like, okay, you just can't go this way in the demo. Like it wasn't like a separate package. But anyway, some of these are like kind of just like, hey, here's like a slice of life kind of experience. I think that's sort of like the Everhood demo that I played a while back, which I think eventually we'll all talk about that game at some point. Yeah. But yeah, I wanted to highlight a few games here, and one of them is called Germinal, and it's a really cool little precision platformer that's got a very like Celeste kind of art style with like the kind of pixelated, but not super detailed, but still kind of detailed, if that makes sense. Like you got a nice like sense of movement to the character, but there's no like face on it, you know? But it looks very similar to Celeste, and it even has a dash mechanic that's kind of similar to Celeste, but it works definitely differently. It feels very unique. You get like a little jet pack, almost like a water pack that like you can either, and then you have like a meter that it charges that like as you use it, kind of like Breath of the Wild when you're climbing, like the green circle as it ticks down. Yeah. Because you can either use it to like kind of give yourself a boost as like a double jump, and that uses half of your like circle meter of like the juice of the jetpack, or you can hold down one of the triggers and use it as like a hover pack, and you can use that to like kind of chain things, and you can wall jump and stuff like that. You can't double jump other than the fact of like if you're out of juice, you can't double jump. You can only do it when you have the jetpack juice, but you can do it in a way where you're like giving yourself the double jump and then hovering, or you're hovering and then double jumping and then wall jumping. And like the way, you know, when you land on the ground, like in a lot of these games, that'll recharge your, you know, your water pack or jetpack. Like it kind of reminds me almost of like the flood unit in Mario Sunshine.
Yep.
Although you can't shoot it like outwards, at least not yet. But it's really, it seems like there's the potential to like add some abilities, because like I was getting all these collectibles, like almost like the strawberries in Celeste. Not to keep drawing comparisons to that, but it's kind of inevitable when you're talking about pixel art precision platformers.
Yep.
But when you would get like a yellow one, and they were just like little, like I don't know if they were triangles or diamonds or something, but if you got a yellow one, instead of your little water jetpack being blue, it would turn yellow. And nothing changed other than that, just the color. But it seemed like the developer was talking about potentially adding in like power-ups and stuff like that. So nice. I just played like the first level of this, and like my only gripe with it is I wasn't super into like the art style of like the cutscenes or whatever, like the titles, like all like the character art when like conversations pop up and stuff is just really, I just really was not a fan, like to the point where I saw the game at first and I was like, I don't know about this one, and then but then I saw the game in action. Our buddy Paradigm was streaming it, and I was like, this game looks sweet. So I just had to play it. So it looks really polished, plays really fluidly. It's just like a game to definitely keep an eye on. It's nice. Really, really cool. And then another couple I wanted to mention really quick. There's a game called Teabat, and that's all one word. And I know, Randall, you checked out the little bit of gameplay that I posted for this earlier. Yep. And like it's like this game has a very unique style. Like it's kind of got a Game Boy aesthetic right off the bat. It actually starts out in like a 4-tone grayscale when you start the game, and then as you play as a bat, obviously, like I guess I shouldn't say obviously, but a bat that collects like teacups and tea kettles. They're all over the place, and the gameplay kind of plays a little bit like Sonic, but then you also have like on the screen you have all this extra information that's kind of similar to like how Hack has that, to bring up Hack again, has like all that info on the sides of the screen. Like, so it's kind of a 4:3 aspect ratio, but then on the sides you have all this extra information. Yeah. Telling you like what zone you're in and how many of the tea kettles you've collected. And on top of the screen, there's like actually like a map that kind of, because you're moving really fast and you can't see a ton of the level in front of you, right? Which is sort of normally a complaint, especially that I personally level at Sonic games. And you do like, you can run really fast in this game. You can double jump. You can fire like a sonar blast that can actually not hurt enemies. It actually will just collect the teacups, which are really just like coins. And then you go to a shop, and the first shop you get to, it's so awesome. This like font comes up in like this ghost like face, this like demon face, and it's just like welcome, and it has this like really great like pixel art. Like it's almost like 3D. It's so cool. It even has some moments in this game that have like some 3D effects that are really cool. But anyways, you buy the first thing you buy is a spectral lens, and then that kind of turns the game into like green Game Boy color. And then you buy another thing. I forget what it is, but it's some other type of lens or glasses or something. And then it's like now you see the game in like a full color scale that like is the original palette. And then you can unlock, like I've unlocked probably in the demo alone, like probably 25 or 30 different palettes. Oh, wow. Like it's crazy. But I've just been leaving it on the original because there were 3 different areas and they all kind of shift palettes as they kind of like Dogger Eye that we've talked about before. Yeah. Like every area or every level kind of has its own like feel and flair to it. Right. But you even get like, you can buy like a Santa hat and sunglasses, like just like really stupid, quirky stuff for your character to wear. But if you're just wasting your teacups and your coins, you actually, when you die, kind of like Sonic, you spend 10 coins or 10 teacups to come back to life. Okay. Or whatever. So it's like really like kind of low stakes because you really do have a lot of coins. They're like everywhere, and they like if you go from one screen to the next to like and go back, like they'll all be back, so you can just kind of farm for the coins if you want to.
Which that's cool. That allows you to play a little bit recklessly, speed wise. So that's fun too.
And also play a little bit more recklessly because even though you do end up running into the same issues a little bit that I run into with Sonic games, where you're kind of like losing your momentum a little bit as you run into things. But in this game, it's usually just a wall. It's not like a spike wall that you lose all your coins and like die. And you get like 6 hit points before you have to spend your, like, it's really, the game's called like Teabat, and then they keep saying show no fear. Like there was one kind of cutscene where I like fell down this like cathedral tower or something, and I smashed on the ground and died, but it was clearly a cutscene. And then this like I don't know, NPC just popped out, kind of like an angel or something. It was like show no fear and brought me back to life.
Nice.
And then like ever since then, I just spend 10 teacups to come back to life. So and like I think I have like 320, so there's like no risk of me dying anytime soon. But it was like a 40-minute demo, like, and I felt like I was like as soon as I was done, I was like I could not. There's not a game that is higher up on my most anticipated games list. Like, it's got so much style. And again, that map on the top of the screen, I kind of mentioned it briefly and didn't really go into it, but it's like if you get close to a tea kettle, it's like your bat sonar can kind of sense it. It'll like kind of barely fade in. You can see it barely. So you're like, oh, I think I can get over. So you can kind of use that map in like you're kind of looking up and down, and you can use that a little bit to control your speed as well, because you can see like where the elevation changes and stuff like that. So really cool, really open-ended. And then real quick, I did want to mention one more called OCDA, and this is OCDA, but the reason I'm pretty sure it's pronounced OCDA is because it's kind of all based around an octo-directional dash, as we know and love. Although this one is done very differently. You play as a potato, which is, I don't know if that's just what it says on the page, but really just like a little jumping bean or something. But I guess a jumping potato, yeah. But it's got this really like awesome like atmospheric pixel art, really awesome atmospheric like vibey soundtrack. It's like raining when the game, and like the grass is like blowing in the wind. It's like kind of like it's like a 2D version of almost like a short hike, how that looks sort of in a way.
Nice.
But yeah, I just found it to be like a really difficult, awesome precision platformer that takes puts a little different spin on that octo-directional dash, because it takes like, how in the new Super Mario Brothers games, or even in some of the 3D Mario games, they have like those floating like water things that like they'll be in midair, and it'll be like a patch of water that you can jump up into and swim into, and then like jump out of into the next one kind of thing. It's kind of, they're like those type of areas that are shaped like octagons. And then when you jump inside of that, if you're inside of that area, whatever angle if you press the dash button, you can only use the dash when you're inside of that area at first. And then it will pull you towards the center and kind of launch you from there. So like if you're jumping into the octagon, right, and you're in like the bottom quadrant, or it's not a quadrant, but part of the octagon, it'll kind of highlight that portion of the octagon. And so if you're in the bottom part, it'll launch you upwards. If you're in like the diagonal part, it'll launch you upwards and diagonal. If you're at the top and you press dash, it'll launch you downwards. Like it pulls you towards the center and kind of launches you. But then halfway through the game, you get the ability to then push away from that. So when you get close enough to it, you can, instead of pulling yourself towards the center, you repel yourself away from the center. And then you start to use those in tandem with one another to like clear some pretty difficult precision platforming. Like it was getting pretty intense when I was playing, in spite of this kind of like super chill, low key style. But I love like the levels. Like it's got this great ability not only to like press up or down, like, in a lot of platformers where you can like hold down up or hold down down and then be able to glance and see below you or see above you a little higher. You can actually go into like a free cam mode, because some of these levels are huge or pretty long, where you're like falling down a cavern. So you go to free cam and scroll all the way down the level. It does this really great like white outline frame, and then you can scroll all the way down, see everything you have to clear and where the checkpoints are and stuff, and kind of get a glance. I think you can do that in Celeste too. And kind of scroll through the level and like see what challenges lie ahead. So actually you can't do it at will in Celeste. It's only at those like binocular points that you get to. But it's like that. You can do that whenever you want. But yeah, I just found the style to be just impeccable. The gameplay was spot on, and I thought it was a really cool way to do that. Yeah, to iterate on the dash mechanic in a way that I haven't seen. It felt really fresh and really challenging and really fun. And it did utilize like where you're like by the end of the demo, like you're in this giant octagon, like where you're just in a whole space that is that kind of underwater essentially space or
nice.
that area. So you're always launching upwards and you're having to grab the like essentially the thing that will recharge your dash with it before you fall on the spikes and just like chain like 10 of them in a row before it's really awesome. It's a really cool game. And I didn't even know it was a demo. And then I beat the game. It was like, thanks for checking out the demo. Stay tuned for more. And I was like, oh, sweet.
Nice.
So yeah, I am just super pumped for this game. And yeah, I just wanted to, I meant to go through those a little quicker, but I'm just so excited about all three of them that I couldn't help myself. But yeah, why don't we from there get into the pinball conversation that you kind of initiated here, John, at least in the sense that you were talking about playing some Pokemon pinball. And then I think we just kind of went wild from there.
Oh, yeah.
And then we kept finding cool new pinball games to
Absolutely.
recommend to each other.
Or cool old pinball games, we should
Yes,
say.
that's very new to us. But yeah, we found the old copy of Pokemon Pinball for the Game Boy Color, the one with the Rumble pack and the massive black cartridge.
Yes.
We played a bit of that, and you know, that was fun. And then Kevin, you found the GBA sequel to that. That was the Ruby
and Sapphire.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that was just more boards, more like bells and whistles, more Pokemon, more mechanics added to that. And then I found my favorite copy from the Game Boy, not Color, the Kirby's Pinball Land.
Kirby's Pinball Land,
Yes.
I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, man. And then we just kept finding new ones and kept recommending that. And Randall, what was the Gator one?
Revenge of the Gator.
Revenge of the Gator.
Also
the Gator.
developed by HAL Laboratory.
Also a great Game Boy original. Oh,
Yes.
So
Yeah.
there was
ton of personality in that one.
Oh, yeah.
so many good pinball games. And God, what else did we find? There was
We played Mario Pinball Land, which is also known as Super Mario Ball overseas, which is kind of a better name. I kind of like Super Mario Ball better.
That one's kind of bizarre, being 3D and all like that.
It's
like,
weird.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. That was
It work really well.
I really like that.
Surprisingly well.
It's 3D that they used also in like what was it? Bomberman Max 2.
Really?
Which was, yeah, like there was a bunch of they would have cutscenes, and it's kind of that the pre-rendered sprites thing that they would do in Donkey
Yes.
Kong Country. Where
Yes.
they make a 3D image and then just, render it and pixelate it and then just turn that into a 3D object, even though it's really just pixel art.
Yep.
Yeah. And I know we wanted to dig into some pinball as well because Randall, it's been a while since you've gushed about some pinball games on the
guess so.
podcast, but it definitely used to be a staple for a little while.
I ran out of them for a little while, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, but this is kind of like at least for me, like I love pinball, even regular pinball. Well, I shouldn't say I love pinball, but I really enjoy playing pinball. It's fun.
Yeah.
But I'm never very good at it. I never can make it last really. But in these video game pinball games, like a lot of them, I can be pretty decent because I think they're a little more forgiving a lot of times. They just like, they give you that shooter's roll or whatever you want to call it a lot of times. Or in the case of like one we didn't mention yet, it's Sonic Spinball. You got a little bit of control over Sonic. Like you can kind of like use the gamepad to control Sonic left or right. Not completely, but you can definitely finesse it a little
Because
bit.
in Spinball, Sonic is the pinball.
Yes. And it's man, I was really enjoying that one. I only played for like a half hour the other night, but I was like, it's really cool when you can save yourself all the time. It really incorporates a little bit of the platforming, like nothing crazy, but like at least from as far as I got, but like when you fall into like the little toxic bin at the bottom and then you're like paddling, like it's got tons of personality, tons of style.
And on that topic, like there's something about pinball games that like I just want those hybrid games. That's what I really want. Like when I started playing like the Pokemon pinball ones, there's the whole catching mechanic.
Yeah.
Where if you hit them hit the ball into a specific area, that'll trigger a catching event, or in the Ruby Sapphire one, a hatching event. So there's multiple ways that you can get new Pokemon, and then they add to your Pokedex, and that's the incentive to keep playing that over and over again, is to complete your Pokedex and go further, get beyond just getting a high score, which is, the typical goal in my pinball game, is what I would say is like the reward is playing the board. But like, what gets me to come back is the games like the Super Mario. God, I keep forgetting what the actual name of it is.
Mario Pinball Land.
Yeah, Mario Pinball Land.
Yeah.
Like where it gives you levels, basically, where each screen is its own little mini level that has a star that you're trying to collect, and there's different objectives, like, oh, you need to clear this like screen of all enemies in order to get the star, or like hit it in a cannon that will launch you in a specific area. Like, I love those little takes on it. And like Sonic Spinball, where it is like you're trying to progress through things and then get to a different area and a different level,
get those Chaos Emeralds.
Yeah.
Like I need a little bit extra incentive that to just have me come back and keep playing a game. And I wish that there was, like, when I played Yoku's Island Express, which I think we've talked about on this podcast before.
We've at least mentioned it. Yeah.
That I loved, because it was, I think, mostly a Metroidvania, and that did have pinball like areas in it, but for the most part you have pretty free control over your character. That is, your little dung beetle postman is tethered to your ball that you're carting around, but you can launch. Like, there's so much extra mobility in that.
You even have a little bit of control like you do over Sonic, like just a little bit. But you can definitely move the ball around a little bit in that game too while it's in play on a pinball area.
But I remember, like, when I started playing the Mario pinball, like, I was just like, I wish there was a little bit more like control over just going to an area, rather than, I just need to hit the ball in the right area in order to get to the cannon.
Need to hit the Stargate and then hit it through the Stargate after I already hit it once.
That's
and
pinball, baby.
It's a little bit the Mario. The only gripe I have is like most of the areas are pretty barren. So like once you've like completed the thing, it's like you really are just trying to hit it through the gate, and there's nothing really. And a lot of times it's just hard to lose. Like, it takes a really, really long time to like get a game over or whatever in that game to like move on to the next stage. At least for me, because you're always getting like the power up of like the pipe that blocks the area. That was my same gripe with Pokemon pinball, especially with Ruby and Sapphire. It's like that ball saver is like constantly on. Like I would play for like almost an hour for like on my first ball, but that's a huge exaggeration, but it'd be like 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And I'm like, I haven't lost a ball yet. Like, this is I could never end on this game. So there were a few times I was just like, there's not enough challenge here. Where like the one that I think Randall, you and I maybe put the most time into, or at least me, was Dragon's Fury on the Genesis.
Oh yeah.
And for me, that's kind of the perfect hybrid, because it is more, I think we talked about Demon's Tilt on the podcast before, which is a newer game that I think is heavily inspired by this game. It's even very much like a 3-tier pinball table, but it's able to do things like just throw like enemies into the mix, and you're like shooting enemies that are all over the screen. Like, it's got like almost like a little bit of like a dungeon crawler kind of feel to it.
It does,
like a top-down dungeon crawler where you're like triggering events. Gauntlet or something. Yeah, but like it evolves. The table keeps evolving. There's like this big witch head in the center of the table that you're just blasting away at, that like eventually like blows up and turns into like a snake demon face. It's like
turns into a dragon.
It just constant. Yeah, it's like it's something you would never be able to do on a real pinball table, you know what I mean? And it's just, I found that interactiveness is what engages me the most. But I do like those extra layers as well.
Oh yeah, I love those. Like Dragon's Fury and Devil's Crush by extension, which is the original game that was on TurboGrafx that maybe more people know, especially post Wii Virtual Console era, is Devil's Crush. But I had never played this version, Dragon's Fury, on Genesis, which was kind of like a director's cut port that came later. They're essentially the same game, although there are some kind of differences as far as there's a lot of bonus games that you can achieve by, you know, hitting a certain head or whatever to open up, and then you shoot in the mouth, and then it goes into this little bonus completely separate from the board bonus area to like kill all the enemies on there, which is easier said than done, because if you lose your ball once, then you're gone, you know, you're out of the bonus area. But man,
and there's a ton of those areas.
Tons.
There's like 8 or 10 or something. It seems like I was always getting a new one.
Yeah,
and they're really cool. They're like, they have these little like like weird faces on the side that like the ball will like pop into the eye socket and like launch out. Like, it's really, really cool. And I think one of the things they changed too is like the first one being Devil's Crush is like they did kind of remove instead of pentagrams, they're just regular stars and stuff like that. So yeah, but I will say I did play both versions. I had Devil's Crush on my Wii back in the day on the Virtual Console, and then this one, and I actually like this one a lot more, to be honest. Like, not only those additions, but the soundtrack is just slamming.
I agree
in this
with
game.
you on the soundtrack.
It's like one of the best Genesis soundtracks, other than it's got less music than, you know, some of the more well-known soundtracks, I guess. But it is just jamming top to bottom. I really got sucked into this one, and even played a little bit of Psycho Pinball, which is a game that never made it over to North America. And I was curious on this one, Randall, because this one probably felt the most to me like real pinball.
It is,
especially out of these retro games. Like, it really felt like those more modern takes on like these, you know, where it's like a replication of a real table. But I was curious because this is from Codemasters, who I think makes a lot of those newer games, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm not sure. But yeah, Psycho Pinball, another game that I had never played until knew we were going to talk pinball. And yeah, it never came out in North America. It was only a European release. But what I liked about it is what you were alluding to, Kevin, is it's way more like the kind of true replica, like Williams Pinball Collection type of experience, where it's trying to take like an actual pinball game and make that digital with not necessarily a whole heck of a lot of frills otherwise. But what impresses me in Psycho Pinball is it's accomplishing that on this 16-bit hardware. Like, most of the other games, you know, the other pinball games kind of feel a little bit video gamey. Like the physics aren't quite there. I will say Devil's Crush / Dragon's Fury, the physics feel great in that game for the most part to me.
Yeah. I think they feel great in most of these games.
In most of them, they do.
If not, maybe just like a little slow on the like Pokemon. And I'm totally wrong about Codemasters, by the way. I looked it up. They have nothing to do with anything other than Psycho Pinball.
That's fair. That's fair. But they did a good job with it, because it's just like that stood out to me, and just the polish, like the graphical presentation was like really impressive. It's kind of evocative of like a LucasArts type of art style.
Yeah, that's a really great touchstone.
Yeah, like, and it's really impressive looking for a Genesis game. And it's like, it is just straight up 4 pinball tables. But I liked that for what it was. But yeah, Dragon's Fury in particular is just hooked me like crazy. If I had to recommend just one, at least on the Genesis, it would be Dragon's Fury.
That's the one I spent the most time with as well. Although, again, I've been firing all these up quite a bit. And the one thing I'll say about the Game Boy ones too is like it is a little bit jarring when like the screen doesn't scroll with the ball and it just shifts up like each time. So those games I found myself, even Revenge of the Gator and Kirby's Pinball Land, like I liked them, but I was just like, when there's other ones that I can play that are way smoother and quicker and whatever, I just tended to go to those.
I was gonna say, like with Kirby's Pinball in particular, like I actually like how that does, where they're kind of like single screen as opposed to like a like double length one that like shifts when you go to the top half of it, whereas like Kirby's like Pinball, each one is an individual one that you're trying to get to the top level, and then you'll get to the boss. And that was probably my most played of all of these, just from a childhood perspective. But I love that.
That was a big title back in that day. I remember seeing that advertised all the time.
That might have been the very beginning of the Kirby spin-offs. Yeah. I don't know if it was the very first, but I mean, Kirby's got a long history of taking some stabs at some different types of games.
Great spin-offs.
Yeah. And I'm sure we'll get into some of those in the future too.
Prolific.
But yeah, I don't know. Any more pinball thoughts, guys, or good to wrap it up for this week?
I gotta save it for the future. I'll be talking more pinball eventually.
Yeah, we got plenty more pinball. I got to let you borrow my copy of Metroid Prime Pinball, John, on DS, because that is like on the level of Dragon's Fury, but like
very similar.
It's awesome,
actually.
Very much the way the enemies like spawn on the screen and the way you take them down. But the way Samus, like when you get that morph ball in the center of the screen, and then Samus like comes out of it and you start blasting enemies. It's so sweet. Oh yeah, you got to borrow that game, John. I'm bringing it over once I'm fully vaccinated.
Let's do it.
But yeah, I think we can wrap things up there this week, guys. And as always, you can find us on the internet at pursuingpixels.com. We've got a nice handy link tree /pursuingpixels where you can find all our stuff. Otherwise, on Twitch, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Discord. Please throw recommendations out there for us. We're looking for new games to play, new games to talk about, especially if you guys are interested in hearing us talk about them.
Yeah.
That'd be even more enticement for us to check them out. So please toss stuff our way, and otherwise, we will catch you next week. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I can't believe I messed up that Final Fantasy thing, too, though. I'm mad about the Game Boy thing.
I will play that. Like, I have all of those on... on the emulator as well. Like I've been wanting to play Final Fantasy Adventure and Legends were the two for the Game Boy. One of those
is like Secret of Mana-esque, if I'm not mistaken.
I think Final Fantasy Adventure is on the Collection of Mana, and I think it was also made in a way that it was like meant to be like, oh, we made Final Fantasy an action RPG to introduce it to Western audiences. So I think because you mentioned that, I like had that in my head, and I kept thinking Game Boy.
Man,
so
all the best Final Fantasy games are the ones that are the least like Final Fantasy.
What does that say?
I got to get back to 12.
Okay.
12 rules.
I have that game.
It's so good, and like people complained that like, the way that you like do the AI is like you basically don't play the game, and I'm like, yeah, you set up triggers so like, oh, if your health is under this amount, like you have a character will automatically heal you, or if an enemy is weak against this thing, then they will target it. It's such a cool system.